Can't be that bad.
You're really trying at this, aren't you? You're
Yeah,
really trying at this. Jimmy, get in the spotlight. And here you go. Here's your cold open. There you go.
boom.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Draft Digest. The sickest NFL draft and scouting podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome into the Sick Podcast Draft Digest. I'm John Vogel, host today. Emily's out today, and it's officially NFL draft season. So, thank you all for tuning in, as always. Jimmy with the cold open there. That was awesome. It's about time y'all got to see Jimmy. He always hides. We always talk about him, but there he is. Now you've seen him. Now you know who he is. Don't mob his house now, y'all. Let the man live his life. But we're going to get into some quarterbacks and stuff today, I think, because quarterback obviously is the thing that everybody always asks and wants to talk about the most. It's the most important position on the field. We just watched in the Super Bowl this past week that having a good, capable quarterback keeps you in a game, and having one that, doesn't do the job very well will take you out of it very quickly. Let me break that down a little bit first and get into the Super Bowl a little bit. I think we'll probably have a lot more time to talk about it later. But I do want to say that I was surprised at how well the Seattle defense shut down New England. I thought that was very interesting. And then when you I expected more from Drake May. He missed several throws that he's made all year. He's looked fantastic all year. I guess really with the exception of the playoffs, he'd kind of slowed down a little bit, but it's still expected to see him hit some of those throws. He made a couple really good ones. He made some really bad ones. He's a young player. He's got a really great, bright career ahead of him. I think the Patriots will be back. We'll have a lot of time in the offseason to get into that, especially after we see what they've done. But they're in one of the best positions to keep that roster really competitive for the next 2 or 3 years. So, but kudos to the Seahawks. That defense is phenomenal. What are they calling it? It's not the Legion of Boom anymore. Obviously, it was the Dark Side. I think that's what they're calling it. It's a phenomenal. They were awesome, and the Patriots defense played extremely well. They kept them in that game, and ultimately the offense failed because that defense that the Seahawks rolled out there was phenomenal. But that's what I'm talking about. You can see, a good quarterback keeps the team involved. It keeps them in a game. And that was a very tough game for both quarterbacks. Sam Darnold didn't have his best game. Obviously, Drake didn't. But let's just think about for the fact that Sam Darnold comes into this game on his 5th NFL team, 3rd overall pick, 2018. Went from seeing ghosts to seeing his reflection in the Lombardi Trophy. It's a phenomenal story, but it's also a testament to what a capable quarterback can do. And we spend a lot of time talking about quarterbacks and the potential of these guys. And there's a lot of people, I think, that make early predictions about people winning Super Bowls. I typically don't do that. I had the exception of Jalen Hurts, which that happened. So I can sit on the laurel there of Jalen in his greatness. But with Darnold, this was one of these guys that I don't think anybody expected to see in this position. And it just goes to show that a capable quarterback with a great defense will get you there. That's what we've seen the last couple of years in the Super Bowl. Win it. Is capable quarterbacks with great defenses. So as we kind of get into some of these quarterbacks, that's the lens that I want to look through. Is this guy a capable quarterback? Is he going to keep an offense on schedule and go win a game with with a great defense behind him? That's what I kind of want to focus on with this quarterback class, because this quarterback class, we've talked about it. I said we weren't going to talk about this till the combine. We're almost there. And now that we have all the declarations and everything, we might as well just go ahead and dive into it. Let's go ahead, Jimmy. Let's bring up the graphic, and we're going to keep it plastered here because we don't need to look at my face the whole time. And we can look at, what we're cutting the visual here. So I put this out last week, and this is pretty much where I'm at. There might be a little bit movement as we kind of get in. Mark Gronowski's kind of on the edge there at 11 out of Iowa. But I want to go into these 10 guys and focus on these 10 guys specifically in today's episode. So Fernando Mendoza is clearly the number one guy to me in this class. And that's considering everything that I just, said about him a few weeks ago. From a talent standpoint, from being able to operate an offense, Fernando is among the best, if not the best in this class, as a pure game manager. In fact, if I had to compare him to somebody, at least with his playing style and the way that he kind of plays, I think Kirk Cousins. Okay. And Kirko, he made a good career for himself. I don't think we're going to see him play beyond this year. I hadn't seen an official retirement announcement or anything yet, but I don't think we'll see him around too much longer. If this year at all. That's kind of who I see with Fernando. Is he's a guy who can go out there, he can run the offense when everything's on schedule. He can make just about any throw that you ask him to. It's when he has to deal with pressure. It's when he has to deal with, not maybe misdiagnosing a blitz and getting into the wrong protection. He's got a free defender in his face. That's where he really starts to struggle, is when you can get pressure to him consistently. And we saw that. We saw that against Penn State. We saw that against Miami in the national championship. We've seen this at multiple points of the year. So we know that he can that when everything's on time and he's got time and he's not flustered, he's not under pressure, he can make just about any throw on the field. So what you're going to do is you're going to hope that you can develop him to handle pressure. Some guys have the knack to do it. Some guys don't. It's not a trait that you want to project that type of development as an evaluator. Now, just really getting him comfortable into an offense, I think, is the first key. This was his first year at Indiana, first year with this offense. They had a great defense behind them. And this kind of goes to the point that I'm making, which is, if you look at the Super Bowl the last couple of years, this is the type of quarterback that with the right defense could go win the Super Bowl. Okay, that's Fernando Mendoza. That's not to say that it happens. Okay, this is not a prediction. This is just an observation. So the other weakness, I think, to his game is he can hit the deep ball. The back shoulder stuff that he throws is really, really good. It's in the intermediate stuff. He's really good. It's really just being consistent with the short game. And some of that kind of goes to his platform a little bit. You see him, it's almost like he's trying to take a little off the ball, or, he's worried about somebody not catching something short and underneath, and he'll just miss. And he does it relatively often. I bet if you looked at the stats and you looked at the throws inside of 5 to 10 yards, I think that you would see that his percentages would be right around average, if not below it. That's the one little thing to his game. But again, a good quarterback's coach can kind of work through that. More confidence in the players around you can work into that. And while they had some good guys on that offense this year at Indiana, that team was not a list of stud NFL players. Most of those guys that played on that team with him aren't going to be starters at the next level. They're not going to be guys that, that tight end, for example, Emily loves him. He's a fullback, really. That's the thing. He's a fullback. He's not going to catch a lot of balls at the next level. That's not going to be his forte. He's going to be a blocker. He's going to be an H-back. And, so he didn't have the reliable tight end prospect. The running backs out of the backfield weren't consistent, between Roman Hemby and Kalen Black. And then I think the guys like the receivers, Elijah Surratt, he's a capable overall receiver, but does he ever become a number one receiver truly at his size? Not really. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't separate consistently. So when you kind of look at the supporting cast that he had, it kind of makes his Heisman even more impressive. And that's coming from a guy that hasn't liked him a lot this whole process. But when you look at that cast and you evaluate these guys that were around him, okay, he had the deep threat that emerged halfway through the year. Outside of that, these aren't guys that are going to go play at the next level. So they're not going to play a lot. Let's put it that way. They'll be on teams. They're not going to play a lot. So Fernando, he's going to check all those boxes. I think you could pretty much put it in pen now. He's going to be the number one pick in the draft, and the Raiders are going to go ahead and invest in him being their long-term quarterback. So that's Mendoza. You look at Ty Simpson out of Alabama. I've got him at number 2, and I kind of went back and forth with this, but I went with Simpson because he again is sort of in the same mold that we just talked about. The only difference really between Mendoza and Simpson, their skill sets are similar. The areas of the field that they throw to are similar. I think Mendoza's got a better deep ball than Simpson does. Definitely throws a back shoulder a lot better. Strengths are similar. The only real difference is Ty Simpson's got more mobility than Mendoza. And he did play with a cast of guys that are going to be playing on Sundays and should play a lot. And then I think he struggled in the first game of the year against Florida State, and it was really the pressure and just trying to let the game slow down. The game slowed down for him as the season went on. And then you get to the SEC championship and then the playoff game after Oklahoma. Actually, the first half of Oklahoma was bad too. But you get into that area, and he just didn't perform up to expectations. He didn't, So, and it was the pressure. He wasn't handling the pressure well. Georgia was able to get in his face. He looked out of rhythm the whole time. He's a year away from really being a starter in the NFL. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with Simpson is he's probably a high-tier backup at worst. He can be a mid-tier, low-level starter, capable with the right defense. That's the key word here, capable. All right, it's not a strength. He's not going to be a guy that's going to come in here and he's going to make things happen and just be a superstar. That's not who Ty Simpson's going to be. Ty Simpson's going to be another game-managing type quarterback, a guy that's going to get the ball out on time and be capable of keeping that offense on schedule. Keep him protected. That's going to be the key. Garrett Nussmeier. You all know about him. You all know that I really liked him coming into the year. You all know that I thought he would probably be the first quarterback here. Here he is at number 3. And there's a couple things that kind of led to him coming to this position. So we wanted to see a jump from him this year. We wanted to see him get a little bit better, be able to process things better, play a little bit better, look like he's on top of it. And in that first game against Clemson, he did. He looked the part. He was dealing with a leg and knee injury through most of the year that really hampered him. You saw his mechanics fall apart. And then I think there's a real question. Not a lot of people are talking about it because you talk about this stuff. It's almost taboo in the military, in the media. It's like there are questions about his coachability. His dad's been an offensive coordinator in the league for a long time. Does this kid think that he's entitled? And that's going to be kind of what people are trying to figuring out at the combine. Where is he at mentally? Is he able to come in here, prove himself, work at it, show that he can show that he can be the leader that he needs to be? And those were the questions that we kind of came out of with LSU. I mean, they fired the head coach, they fired the offensive coordinator. It was clear that they all weren't getting along with Nuss. And then the interim comes in, and they get into it on the sideline. In their first game, he gets benched. He doesn't play the back end of the year. Part of that was the injury. The other part was, well, is he coachable? That's the question. So I think that's when I look at Nussmeier, I see Case Keenum. And that's a high-level backup quarterback, a potential bridge quarterback. If you're kind of in between years, you want to develop a guy for a year, You bring him in, that's your competition. Hey, if you could beat this guy out, you're ready. If you can't, you need to sit another year. And I think that's what we're going to probably see from Nussmeier, is that high tier backup that sticks around the league for a long time, gets a couple seasons as a starter, never really separates himself into the low tier starter area. He's going to be right there in that bridge quarterback, very high level backup. So that's where I've got him. Drew Aller, Penn State, number 4. This was a guy a lot of people really liked coming into the year. He has some major platform mechanical issues. His upper body mechanics are good. His lower body mechanics are good, but they're never synced to each other. And so he ends up looking very awkward at times as a thrower. With that being said, if this guy can get that put together, if he can get around a coach that can put all that together, that can get him in sync, that can get him operating correctly, the potential is absolutely there. Aller's an athlete. He's a very decent athlete. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can make good throws. We've seen him, make some pinpoint throws from time to time. And he just doesn't do it consistently because of the platform mechanical issues. And and I really want to stress this, that his upper body, like his release and everything, is fine. His lower body is fine. It's just they're never in sync with each other. If you were looking at him and you could only see his footwork, you'd think this guy was a good quarterback. If you could only see his upper body, you'd think this guy's a good quarterback. And so, he's got the size too. He's 6'5". He's going to be 240 pounds or so, 235. He can move. That's Josh Allen. That's like a light version of Josh Allen. And that's going to bring a lot of intrigue. And so he's a very conditional 4 because he is a projection, right? Where it's saying he can get that cleaned up enough in the right situation to come out here in a couple of years, become a starter in the league. He has the potential to do it. Does that potential get realized? That's the risk. And that's why you see a guy like him probably go day 2. I'd be surprised if he's on the board at the beginning of day 3. But that's what I'm looking at with Drew Aller. Is I see the tools. I see he's worked on the mechanics. Somebody just needs to get him in sync and get his body right. And he could be a very good quarterback. Very high-level quarterback. It's just the risk is so high there. And then obviously the medicals are going to be big. He tore his ACL midway through the year. So he's got to clear the medicals once he gets to the combine. And if he does that, it should be day 2. Number 5, we're going into some areas here that they're not pictured. And that's because obviously X limits you to 4 pictures when you make a post like this. So Trinidad Chambliss had an incredible year at Ole Miss. I mean, he had some magical moments. It looked like Ole Miss had a real shot at the national championship. And they did. They played extremely well. And Miami ended up getting it done at the end of the day. And so here's kind of where I'm at with Trinidad, where he's not a real toolsy guy. He's a very solid athlete. And he's got some improvisational ability. But he's small. And this was his first year in big-time football. He won 2 national championships at Division II Ferris State. Okay, so there's some ability there, but I don't think he's necessarily a starter really at any point of his career. I think that this is a long-term backup. And that's why I've got him at 5, because this is where we start to get into the territory of this quarterback class where I don't see these guys being starters. I don't. Chambliss is smaller. He doesn't have the arm strength to make up for it. And he's a pretty decent athlete, but it's not like a defining feature to his skill set. So that's where I like him, kind of in the beginning of that day 3. Maybe he comes off the board in the 4th round. Somebody takes a shot on him because a good backup quarterback's good to have, and he's going to come in and compete. And that's something that's invaluable in the quarterback room. That's maybe something that gets under talked about is these guys have to come in there and be willing to compete, knowing that they're probably not going to win a starting position. Trinidad's got that. He just loves football. He wants to play. So I think that he could settle into a backup role. And then we got Carson Beck, who we just mentioned, Miami, Ole Miss almost beat him. It was a fun game. Ole Miss had a lot of fun games this year in the playoff. But Beck took the team to the playoff this year. And he had some really good years at Georgia. I think a couple of years ago, I thought he had a shot to be a first-round pick. With Beck, you've got a 6-year senior. He's got size. He's got a solid arm. He can drive the football pretty well. He's a capable athlete when he has to be. Doesn't like to run. Prefers to throw it. Will throw it away. But he takes some risks. He's got that gunslinger mentality. Now, with him, there is a major maturity question mark. And I mean, everybody saw his very public summer before the start of the season, transferring out of Georgia, going to Miami. Everybody saw what happened. And we don't need to rehash all that. But with Carson, that's kind of the big question mark is we goes back to, hey, can this guy come in here and compete? That I'm not necessarily sold with on Beck. I think the skill set's capable overall. And I kind of see him as that mid to lower tier backup quarterback. He'll be a 3 probably the first couple of years that he plays. And if he can continue to grow and progress and is mature enough to stay on the team, he'll be a backup quarterback for several years in this league. Miller Moss out of Louisville. I've got him at 7. I'm going to start to kind of speed through these guys a little bit faster and kind of go with the bullet points as we kind of get into the back end, because as I mentioned, these guys are not, I don't think they're starters. But Miller Moss backed up Caleb Williams at USC, transferred to Louisville this year, and had a pretty good year. There were times that it was not good. There was times where, so he was very inconsistent. He was very up and down. The main issue that I kind of had with his game is that he's not consistent underneath. He doesn't really layer throws well, doesn't operate well under pressure, and he really struggles to adjust to the post snap. The arm strength's average. He's kind of, like I mentioned, hot and cold passer in general, but he doesn't really throw very well on the move. That's kind of where I'm sitting with him, where I'm like, this has got backup, lower tier backup written all over him. Cade Klubnik at number 8. A lot of people not sure about Klubnik. And this is a very highly recruited guy coming out of high school, 5-star quarterback, has a good arm, very, very good athlete, very good scrambler, especially for the position. He's 6'1.5", 204. So he's a little bit slighter on the slighter side. Now, his release is something that is a little bit of a concern because he's got a real looping release motion, and it kind of extends it a little bit. Doesn't throw the deep ball very accurately. He's got bad habits where he drops to his back foot when he's under pressure. Doesn't operate well under pressure. His platform's all over the place, inconsistent. And he just doesn't seem to have the football IQ of some of these other guys that we've mentioned. You just don't see him making and understanding things very well consistently. So, but the touch ball that he can throw is beautiful. He's got pretty solid accuracy to short intermediate areas of the field. And his ability as a scrambler is going to keep him in situations. So he's going to be one of these guys that teams are going to have all over the board. Some are going to have him end of day 2. Others are going to have him like back end of day 3. He's going to have a very wide range of opinions, I think, when we get through this process. And that's kind of where I'm sitting with him, is I've got him mid to late 3rd round. This one I'm going to spend a little bit more time on because it's Cole Payton. And we didn't talk about Cole Payton a whole lot on this show this year. Quarterback out of North Dakota State, which, by the way, North Dakota State, if you hadn't seen, it's coming to the FBS. They're going to go join the Mountain West football only. That's going to be fun. Everybody better be playing North Dakota State dynasty next year. I know I am. Cole is a really fun, raw prospect. And I threw this one at some of my friends in the league to try to see what, if I was off base here, if I was kind of maybe over hyping him a little bit, might be a good way to put it. But I threw Steve Young as a comparison here because Cole Payton's a lefty, Steve a lefty. They both had pretty darn good arms. Cole's arm's pretty good, and they were really good scramblers. Cole's a good scrambler. And then they were the other defining feature here is a late bloomer, and that's Cole Payton. He managed to slip to North Dakota State. Wasn't recruited really out of high school, and it's because he was too small. And he went there, he did the work, he built himself up. He's a late bloomer. And I think because of the late bloomer, he's had to kind of adapt his play style a little bit. And North Dakota State did a good job of adapting to him. This is an offense that typically runs power football, downhill, I formation. They've added some other elements, over the years. But this year they were primarily a shotgun team, and they were running some quarterback run and letting him move and throw the ball. And so I want to see Cole really develop as a passer from the pocket. He showed strides in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. But I think that this is the guy, if I had to put a pin in one of these guys and say he's going to outplay his draft position, Cole would be probably my best bet at it. However, with where he is right now, and just the fact that it's so hard to oftentimes project these FCS quarterbacks to the next level, I want to keep him at 9. Now, that might change. I mean, if he goes out there and runs like a 4.5, I might really reconsider putting him over some of these other guys like Miller Moss and Cade Klubnik, and maybe even Carson Beck. But that's where I'm going to have him for now. That's why. And lastly, last guy I'm going to get into, he's really the most controversial player in this class. There's going to be grades all over the place with this guy too. And that's Diego Pavia out of Vanderbilt. Diego, I caught him while he was still at New Mexico State, and it was before they beat Auburn. It was a year before that. And I was just watching him. I think it was I can't remember if Conference USA was playing on weekday nights yet, but it was a game like that where there wasn't a whole lot going on. And he was out there just balling. And I was like, man, he's small, but man, there's something to him. And so I started taking notes, build a profile on him. And then he comes to the SEC. And he has a phenomenal year last year with Vanderbilt. Really brought energy into that program. And then this year, obviously, we all know what he did. Runner-up in the Heisman, has the crash out after the Heisman. That's going to definitely have raised some concern. But then he goes to the Senior Bowl, and he comes in. They had him listed at 6 foot. We all knew he wasn't 6 foot. Comes in just under 5'10", and 198 pounds. So he's very, very small. But he's got a pretty good arm. He's a pretty good improviser. He's just got moxie out the wazoo. I mean, he just loves football. And he's a galvanizer, a true competitive galvanizer. And he's a guy, he doesn't care if you say he's not going to start, he's going to come compete. I don't really see him being more than a mid-level backup. And that's really because of the size. And, if you look at the guys that are doing it that are right at his size, which are, Kyler Murray and Bryce Young, and that's pretty much an exclusive group with these guys in terms of the size. Kyler's got elite athletic ability, doesn't have the leadership, doesn't have the galvanizing ability that Diego has, but he's got that elite athletic ability that gets him out of a lot of situations. And Bryce Young, while he's not that elite athlete, he is an elite improviser. When shit hits the fan and he's trying to get out of the pocket, he can make things happen. And he's just got a natural knack for it. Pavia's got a little bit of that improviser, but he's not as good as Bryce was, and he's not the athlete that Kyler Murray is. He doesn't have the arm strength either. He doesn't have it's not a Drew Brees arm, you know. It's a good arm, but it's not great. So he's another one of these guys that I have to sit here and be like, I think I'm just gonna go ahead. I think I'm gonna have to project him as a day 3 guy. Somebody could love him, and I wouldn't be shocked if he went at the top of day 3. But I think he's going to be back into day 3, and he's really going to be a backup. That's where I've got Diego sitting at. Well, I mentioned we can go ahead and move off the graphic here, Jimmy. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. The other guys that, have gotten some attention, I think Mark Gronowski at Iowa really impressed me at the Shrine Bowl. I really didn't give him much of a chance. Transferred to Iowa last year from South Dakota State. Had a pretty up and down year at Iowa. That offense is just, they have so many problems just getting that offense to consistently operate. And I think that's just going to continue as long as Iowa exists, But I liked him at the Shrine Bowl. I thought that we really got to see a lot of the passion that he has. He had that incredible block on the last play that he played in that game. He's good through practice. He's consistently the best quarterback through practice all week. He's a guy I might slide up in there by the end of it. I just need to probably go back and watch some of his season tape again and try to get something from that. And then Luke Altmaier is the other guy that's got a shot at getting drafted out of Illinois. He's also a little bit on the smaller side, not too small. He's 6'1.5", 214. And he's got that same kind of Pavia ability, right? Where he can kind of improvise and he's a little bit of an athlete and he's got a decent arm. But as you can see, this is not like the quarterback class that we were sitting here talking about, Bo Nix and all these guys out there absolutely blowing it out, with Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix and that whole class. It's not like that this year. There's maybe 2-3 starters. I guess if you count Cole, you can go with 4. If he hits and realizes his potential. But that's really where we're at with this quarterback class. Mendoza's probably going to be the only one that starts right away. And it's because we all know where he's going. And any of these other guys that start this year, it's going to be because coaching situation where somebody gets fired and they have to play, or an injury put somebody in there a little bit too early. And that's where we're at with this quarterback class. This is pretty much the quarterback class we've got. But yeah, there you have it. There is the class of 2026, my breakdown. And I'm sure we'll have more time to go into this as the offseason continues. We've got, 2 months, a little over 2 months till the NFL draft. So there's time. I think the one thing from me that has changed over the last few years has been the fact that it's really hard for me to move on grades during this time of the year. I used to do it willy-nilly. I used to throw people, oh yeah, no, he had a phenomenal combine. I'm going to bump him up like 40 spots on the overall board. What a mistake. It's trying to approach this with caution. It's trying to be realistic and try to compare the talent of this player to the talent that's already sitting in the league. And I don't want to overhype anybody. I don't set high expectations. And I think that's why the people that do listen to me, the people that do read my tweets and watch the show, I think that's why you listen. Because I'm not going to sit here and, talk about that, player Y who's getting drafted in the 4th, 5th round is going to be a, Super Bowl champion, starting quarterback. That's not my style. So I try to keep it as real as possible. And that's why. Because we saw what happened with Shedeur last year. You know, we saw all that. We've seen that with many quarterbacks that have come through over the years, players in general. The expectations get so high when the player ultimately fails. It's a complete failure. And I'm not all about that. So, but that's the quarterback class. Emily should be back next week. We are talking with some players to bring on and to some really fun under the radar guys too. That I think you'll hear their names drafted and probably see play in the league for a while. So we're working on that. She'll be back next week. But for everybody at the Sick Podcast Network, I'm John Vogel, and we will be talking to you here on the Sick Podcast Draft Digest next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Draft Digest on YouTube, X, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.